Okay, so it is a big treat today to have Jennifer Brown with me on the show and proof, actual published author. I know that's kind of one of the things that authors love to see is when you've got the copy of the book in the wild. Not that the book is called In the Wild. In fact, the book is called Ginger Snapped. I guess your next book, Jennifer, could be In the Wild if you wanted. If you
My
wanted.
next book is Bad Dates.
Oh, okay. Well, that might get us started down an
Probably should have
interesting road.
mentioned that.
Yeah, okay. So we have another book to look forward to. So Jennifer Brown is an author. Um, she is in the Twin Cities of Minnesota. I know there are other states with Twin Cities. I have been to some other states that have Twin Cities, but I guess I probably kind of grew up in one in Indiana, maybe sort of, kind of, but this isn't about me. This is about
But I
you.
think we are the Twin Cities, like officially.
Yeah, you're kind of what most people think about.
Yeah,
They think Twin Cities. And you have a baseball team named the Twins, so that
right.
probably makes a little bit of sense. So, but you are, correct me if I'm wrong, you're Gen X.
Yes.
Okay, so and there seems to be a lot of Gen X pride in this book because I also am Gen X, and we grew up a little differently than everybody else.
Certainly everybody else after us, but I don't know. Were the boomers different? I mean, I would assume that I'm like OG Gen X. I'm barely at the cutoff. So I would assume the boomers had a similar.
I don't know. I mean, I guess there's a question as to whether the boomers were so were trying to establish like suburbia and Lebanon and all of that sort of feel. And what by the time we got to Gen X and those of us who grew up who were in school in grade school in the 70s and early 80s had started to maybe we reap the benefits already. I'm thinking back to maybe the people that I have known and worked with that fell into a like late boomer camp where
Yeah.
there's a lot of similarities, but then again, there's some real differences
Yeah,
in
I think the main difference is that at least in my neighborhood, the moms went, they gave us a key and that was it. They went back to work. Whereas, my boomer friends, moms were still home. There were still a few on our block and all of that, but um there was that shift. And then there was the 70s and the 60s with just, the free love and all that nonsense, which is no wonder that we had the glorious 80s that we did because, we rejected, I think, a lot of that stuff.
the 80s were crazy, huh? Um, but the thing that jumped out, one of the things that jumped out in your book was you were talking about, did you have a station wagon growing up?
Yes,
Okay.
everybody
See, we
did.
did not have a station wagon, but
Oh,
we had the same sort of vibe we had a Chevy Beauville van, which was had like two big bucket seats and then it's huge um space in the back, and we would run around in the back while the vehicle was moving. So I think it's the same as a station
oh,
wagon.
I mean, we used to ride in people's pickups in the back, and kids were bouncing out all over the place. We didn't wear seatbelts. I didn't start wearing a seatbelt until my son was born, and that's because they made it the law at that point where you had to wear a seatbelt. Prior to that, it never occurred to me to wear a seatbelt.
Yeah, I think our first seatbelt in the van was just a waist belt. It was
Yeah,
not like
yeah.
the
We
ones
had
people.
them. We never
Yeah,
wore them.
yeah.
Yeah. My dad had
Um,
a convertible. We still have it. Uh, and we used to drive up to the cabin with it, which, if you're a Minnesotan, everybody's got a cabin in Wisconsin for some reason. But we'd go up there in the convertible and you're taking the freeway and it's just you're getting whipped with the wind and all of that, but you're still not buckled in. And now these were boats of vehicles. This was a Cutlass 66. So um nice car, but a boat. And if you got in an accident, you probably weren't going to get hurt unless you got pitched out of it.
Yeah, there used to be kind of this size component to vehicles, which I think went away. I had a friend who would call the tiny cars the extrication extras because if you were in like a Yugo, you were in a lot of trouble. Um, but I think he used to operate under the principle of if I'm bigger than you, then I'm going to survive the accident. And unless you're up against like a school bus or something, you're normally in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I don't know how a convertible works in that regard, but
Yeah.
if as long as you don't roll over.
Right, exactly. Did you have any other random vehicles um, in the family
I
growing up?
I mean, we had the convertible, we had a station wagon that was my mom's for a while, and then she got sick and she couldn't drive anymore. And then my dad bought a Mercedes, and that was the car that we weren't allowed to do anything in. Like no ice cream, no, none of that. That was about it. And then he bought my neighbor's car which was a station wagon, for my brother and me to drive instead of driving the convertible or uh, the Mercedes. And he didn't. The convertible is, it's a classic car, and there's all kinds of stories about that. My brother has it now. I took it to school once. My dad let me, and my brother came to the school and took it. He switched cars, so he had the station wagon that we were driving, and he left it. But he peeled into the parking lot. I could see him out of the window of the school, and he's like, "He's not. You're not going to drive that car." It's a funny story now, but at the time I was pissed off, and so yeah, so he took the car and left me with the station wagon, and it was a 71 or 72 Torino,
Oh,
and
nice.
well, station wagon Torino.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so this would have been in 81, so it was about 10 years old, and the neighbors had stopped driving it because of, they were too old. And but it was kind of an old car. We had a 2x4 that kept the window up because it had gotten off the track. There was God, there was like, I think it had those suicide type doors in the back where you could, with the seats or whatever. And then oh, just everything was, there was a hole in the gas tank. We could put $1 worth of gas in. I was constantly, walking to the gas station with my, little red gas can because that's how it was. Nobody, it was normal
You didn't
back in
think
the
so.
day. I mean, nowadays you don't see that sort of thing, but back then that was part of being, I think, the Gen X of, we just did what we had to do to get through whatever.
Yeah, and I see a lot of traffic in the circles I run in online about kind of the modern approach to the workplace being just something that Gen X people are looking at like, what, you need a mental health day? What
Yeah.
does that mean? I don't understand this concept. It's like I'm sick and I don't go to work, or I'm better and I go to work, but uh, maybe we were just built different. Maybe some of that is coming back.
And we talked about this before you started filming, but I'm not a researcher, but I have theories about things. Um, I think a lot of the problems that we face mentally and all of that is we have a plethora of therapists who've, gone into the system, and you have to, it's like sales 101, create the problem so that you can provide the solution. And I think that that's a lot of what we have going on. Like, all these kids who are anxious. I was anxious as a child and as an adult, and you deal with it. I think we're all anxious. Life is scary sometimes. Um, there's, I think, taking normal human feelings and emotions and responses and pathologizing them has been problematic, I think. slapping a label on a feeling every time something goes wrong is, I don't think, a good idea. That's just how you feel. When I was growing up, my brother and I we fought all the time, and he's 2 years older than me, and he was the kind of kid, he was charismatic, he was clever, he was always getting away with stuff. And if he did get caught, he was charming. So he was kind of not, I wouldn't say what was it? Who was it? Eddie Haskell. I wouldn't say that level, but he had a little bit of that to him. I mean, he wasn't, I don't want to go into a whole lot, but I mean, I, on the other hand, never got away with anything. I was always getting busted, and I didn't do things like that well. Like, I didn't have the gumption to, do a lot of bad stuff because I knew I'd get caught. And, um, but I don't know where I was going with this. He was able to get away with it. And I've
He
completely
have been
lost.
labeled these days? Would they
Hmm?
have said,
Well, he would have been, that wasn't where I was going, but he absolutely would have been labeled as ADHD, or, they would have said put him on Ritalin or something like that. But that all the boys in the neighborhood were like that. They were boys. Boys will be boys. And I know, the women feminists get mad when you say that sort of thing, but we are different. And um, I don't know. I don't think that you can, the idea of labeling every feel. Oh, that's where I was going. Okay. So my brother and I used to fight all the time, and I would bother my parents about it, right? So they'd go out to dinner once a week, and I would inevitably call them because they would leave the phone number of the restaurant they were going to, because we didn't have cell phones. And we'd call probably 3, 4 times, and they hated it. But my father would always say, he's going through a phase, and at one point I said, but he's always in a phase. And but that was the truth. I mean, these are growing pains. This is part of growing up, and you just kind of have to learn to adjust, as we're all moving pieces, right? So I was going through a phase too, and trying to work around his phase or whatever. But now, if he had said to me, your brother has ADHD, that would have completely changed the dynamics of, suddenly I'd be walking on eggshells, or it'd be like, oh, I can't do this because he's got this disease or whatever. So I don't think it's a good idea to slap labels on everything. But apparently I'm old and, out of,
you're old and out of touch
yes.
with the modern world in which we live. Um, but give me a sense of how much, I guess, how much things have changed and I'm talking about specifically in Minnesota, where I gather you've spent most of your adult life.
Yeah, I've been here I mean, I've moved a few times, but um, Minnesota's always been very, I'm sorry, I have this dog.
Dog is great. Dog is
Um,
dog is great. He can make an appearance,
she's
or she can
Go
make
lie
an
down.
appearance.
Go lie down. Um, it's always been Democratic here, very liberal. Not liberal isn't quite the right word. We have DFL, which is Democratic Farmer Labor. And traditionally they were, I would say, conservative in the traditional sense of the word. They were the farmers and the workers, the blue collar workers, and all of that. Um, and but they, your standard Democrat, back in the day when, your centrist, moderate type of thing. So they were normal people, but now, over the last 20 years, it really has shifted to this, like it has nationally, where it's just sort of progressive, kind of off the charts. Now we're going into the socialism territory, and I'm not sure that a lot of the people behind the scenes understand that. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of people vote, I think probably everywhere, the way their parents voted, or they kind of how they grew up in their peers and all of that, that, you kind of hang with the people and you vote the same. Um, and so the party sort of has shifted around them, but they're still voting that way because the Republicans have been painted so very well as horrible people. And when I was growing up, we could be different parties, and you might have a disagreement about something, but you still hung out together. You still socialized. We didn't talk politics. That was, remember growing up, you didn't talk about religion, you didn't talk about politics, and then that changed. So now we do, and here we are.
There was I had a friend who pointed out the sharp turn that we as a country made in this is what he noticed in when so this is around 2016, 2017. And he was able to pinpoint the sharp turn in this sort of way. And he's also a Gen Xer. He said, growing up, Reagan was the president. And at some point, things moved so that it became my president, or after Trump was elected, not my president, was the rallying cry. And, maybe the cult of personality had gotten so big in the past that
I mean,
that
I
shift
certainly think there was a
reflected
lot of that, even when Clinton was president. I think
the
that's when the
mind.
divide started. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think it took that hard turn at that point, but the cracks were there then. Remember, um, the what was, I don't know if it was the impeachment or it was the Paula Jones. It was one of his, was it the impeachment? No, I can't even remember. Um, but it was like, it was no different than the OJ trial. It was like something that was riveting. And so, the media has a lot to do with that too. Um, but I think it started certainly with the Clintons. Hindsight is 2020, and I'd love to spend more time looking back at that. But I just remember feeling like, when Clinton was elected, um, like that's when I started noticing that my beliefs were not particularly welcome anymore. Maybe not as much as when Obama was elected. That was even worse, but it started, I think, at least I noticed it during Clinton's era.
Well, I think there's a I could see the agreement with that. You think about kind of the bell curve of where everybody was, and then after there are a lot of people who now I think might identify towards the right now, but realize that the definition of the right now was what we got during Clinton. Clinton was much
Yes,
more
and
centrist.
it could be that as a Minnesotan that I was probably more sensitive to it, um, with Clinton. Um, I wasn't into politics much during Reagan's era. My brother signed me up for the Young Republicans so that he could have breakfast with George Bush, but I didn't participate in any of it. But I remember, we were, my brother got, ostracized from his friends and family, and not family, but from, teachers and things like that for being a young Republican. So, I was exposed to it in that regard. But with Clinton, for me anyway, with him, my issues were more on a moral issue than his policies, because I actually kind of think his policies were not that bad, especially when he pivoted. I don't think he was. I don't dislike Clinton. I would welcome him if, as opposed to Obama or Biden, by far, except for he comes with Hillary, and I don't want to deal with that. But I thought he was actually. I don't think he was a bad president at all. I just had issues with his morality, and I realized that that's they're all problematic in that regard. But he, for whatever reasons, he kind of bothered me with all the cheating and everything like that.
Um, yeah, that raises an interesting point, I guess, and I would see maybe more right-leaning people would be like, well, how can you have a problem with that? But then now you have Trump and all of that. It's sort of underscores maybe the fact that is there ever going to be anyone in the presidency who is normal?
No, I
Um,
think we crossed that Rubicon with Clinton, right? Because before the Paula Jones and all of those, Monica Lewinsky and all that, the media covered for the president. And, there weren't people trying to, what he did was probably no different than what other presidents before him did. But, we had this CNN 24-hour news cycle that had to be filled. And so it did. Plus, you could weaponize the politics if somebody knew about it, um, on the other side. And I don't remember quite how all that stuff got out now. I'm getting old, but somebody leaked it, right? Or maybe they filed a lawsuit. I guess there was the lawsuits. But I don't think we can put that genie back in the bottle. That's and that probably works for Trump because he's they joke about Clinton that he was the Teflon president, but Trump is by far more Teflon-y, nonstick. Nobody cares. Well, a lot of people care what he does, but I think the people who voted for him don't. Like, this is what we voted for.
yeah, and I guess how much of that though is a response to um, is a response to Trump being vilified as much as he was,
I
that
think that's a big part of it.
so it was almost impossible for anyone. I mean, you see some of the people, and I spent a lot of time on X. You'll see some of the people on X will say things when they see Ron DeSantis, and they'll be like, "We could have had this guy as president." Yeah, we could have had this guy as president. He would have been a very capable president. He was not going to get elected president once they went after Trump, because then it was all about retribution. And in some respects, Biden was retribution for,
Some
well,
respects.
yeah, well, you didn't elect Hillary, so we're really going to give you somebody that you have to vote for this guy. You can't be a misogynist, and so you're going to elect this guy. Yeah, uh, it yeah, the Rubicon has been crossed. The genie's not going back in the bottle, and I think we're probably in for a couple of years of more turbulence, eh? Because I mean, if you're talking about you've got near you, they're about to elect a mayor that is a socialist in Minneapolis. New York City is about to elect, and I should mention to the viewers at home, this will post at some point the week of election, but we're actually talking on election day. Um, New York is going to have Mamdani is going to win, more than likely is going to win um, election in New York City. It would be a surprise if he doesn't. So how much of that is maybe a knee-jerk reaction to, well, you gave us one extreme, so we're going to come back at you with another extreme. The pendulum shifting and shifting way too far in a different direction.
And I mean, it very well could be. Um, I think it's short-sighted, and not in the same way that, God, I try to wrap my head around this, because we really do have very much different beliefs, right, between the right and the left. And um, and I think it's the younger kids and the boomers who want the Zoran Mondamis of the world. Uh, um, and maybe as Gen X, that puts us in a different place of understanding. Uh, Socialism doesn't work. It has never worked, and we learn this in school. Um, we've watched it play out, and yet the kids seem to want it. And I remember, God, growing up, I went to a private school. I had a good education. And when we were learning about socialism, that sounded good to me in eighth grade. And like, why don't we do this? This sounds, everybody gets a piece of the pie. And my teacher, who today, would be considered probably progressive, um, he laughed. He's like, because it doesn't work. Socialism doesn't work. And he explained why very patiently and everything. And gave me many examples of, countries that have tried it and failed and all of that. Um, and I came to understand why. And I don't think the people who want it understand it. It just sounds really good because it does sound good, right? But eventually you run out of other people's money, and there's no other way to explain it than that. I mean, that's the easiest. Like, why would I work if the what I work for is going to get taken away and given to somebody else?
Yeah, but I wonder how much, Jennifer, I wonder how much of this is you and I watched uh, the the Cold War unfold, and there wasn't, I mean, in my mind, growing up, maybe it was a little bit different in your mind, but in my mind, growing up, there wasn't a distinction between communism and socialism.
No,
Just it
no,
was just these are the same thing, and
yeah. I mean,
it's
different
bad,
parts of the spectrum, but they were, they lead into one another. Yeah.
right? And then so we've got an entire two generations that haven't even watched any of this unfold. You know, maybe a little bit of the millennials could say that they witnessed the end of the Cold War and the end of the Soviet Union and all of that. But now we've got Gen Z coming up, and without the Gen X parents saying, yeah, I mean, there was some bad stuff, and Mao was awful, and Stalin was awful, and so on and so forth. There's always that real communism has never been tried, or real socialism has never been tried thing going on,
Hmm.
I guess. And we've got a whole generation or generation and a half that hasn't had to live through any of that.
Yeah. I mean, but the boomers kind of wanted it too back when they were coming up, like in the 60s, right? That was kind of what they were headed for too. I feel like the 80s were this, or late 70s, 80s were this just brief little, like, everybody take a break, and then we'll come back and beat each other up on these sides. But um it really was probably, I mean, there were dark sides to it too, for sure, but there was, you know it was I don't recall the divisiveness back then like it was now. I went to I graduated in 84, and it was Michael Jackson was everywhere. And it reminds me, what was it, the is it Ghostbusters, where he's saying, dogs and cats getting along, and what was that from? I think that were it was a Ghostbusters. It was Bill Murray in
Yeah,
Ghostbusters.
dogs and cats living together. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that's how it was. I mean, we didn't care about the color of your skin. We didn't care about any of that. And then it went away. And it it makes me put on the tinfoil hat of, well, obviously somebody started seeding these ideas to us that we are, that we do need to be divided. I never used to believe that they wanted to do this on purpose. I always thought, oh, that's insane. But I've come to believe that no, it's far more lucrative for a lot of people if we stay divided. And so, as for, my understanding is that the Gen Z are more conservative than the millennials, that they helped um, elect Trump. So
And
that
I
could
think
be.
and I think you're seeing that after the Charlie Kirk assassination. You're seeing that coming out as it's this is okay. And I think that there's so yeah, I'm agreeing with you on that. I think there's maybe a little bit of hope that the discourse can be more reasonable because there's always going to be a faction of people who are like, well, Charlie Kirk said some awful racist things, but that's taking it out of context and looking at the
I
entirety of the
mean,
story. And
that's like saying that George Floyd deserved to die because he was a bad guy. I mean, it's the same argument, right? But you can't make that argument.
yeah, you
Like you
can't make that
can if
right.
you're on the left because you get to do that. But
Right,
um,
right.
I was talking to a woman yesterday. She's an immigrant from Vietnam and American citizen. She was traveling in Europe for the last couple weeks, and she was like, "I was so glad to get back here. I will never understand how people can't appreciate being American. Like it's." I mean, she went, I mean, she went to Rome and she went to all these beautiful places, but she's like, there is nothing that compares to being an American. We have it so well. And I believe that. That's why people want to come in this country because it's the land of opportunity. And so then you've got the people who actually live here saying, "Oh, it's a horrible place." It's like, what are you smoking? It's not horrible. It's great. So I don't understand that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with feeling patriotic towards your country, especially a good country. I mean, you look at Britain and the UK, and it used to be just the most beautiful place, and it's kind of fallen, you know? So I just don't, I don't know. I'm not a poli sci major or anything like that. This is just all observational. Um, I don't really know what else to say.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. You want to talk about the next book?
Sure.
It's called Bad Dates.
Bad dates.
Okay. Um, give me a sense, I guess, if you could, without giving away the plot of the next book, but give me a sense of what would qualify as a bad date.
Well, so the impetus of it was I went on a date last August, like last year, not this year. And um, it was awful. Like everything about it went wrong. And I got home and I mean, we both thought it was awful, right? And I got home and before I had gone out, I posted something on X saying, keep your fingers crossed. I've got this date. It seems promising, whatever. And everyone was like, well, tell us about it when you get home. So I did. And I'm like, that was awful. And I started kind of live tweeting the whole thing and it went viral. So, it was getting, I don't know, 3 or 4 million views. And, um, and it was funny. It was, so that was, I have a whole lot of those is what ends up happening. Part of the problem is, again, I'm in Minnesota and I'm a conservative and most of the men that I meet are not. So it becomes and last year was the fall of Minneapolis was released. We were still picking up from the riots and all that, so it's still very tense. And anyway, so that was what happened. So I've spent a fair amount of time on the dating apps and all of that, and I've just noticed things. So similar to this book, where I notice patterns, and that's kind of what I comment on. So I had the thing about online dating apps is that it's like ordering off an a la carte menu. So you're not getting to know the person first and then considering dating them, you're going there specifically to date what you think is the thing you need in your life, right? So you have this checklist of things that you want, and a lot of people, and myself included, have been, you exclude people from that because you have the ability to filter people out who, might not make, whatever dollar amount you think they need to, or might not be as tall as they should be, or you know what I mean? So you filter out people that in the real world you'd meet and you would click and hit it off, and then you would get to know one another before you started dating. So it kind of puts everything, it kind of flips everything, but it also the dating apps, I don't think they really want you to hook up with some, and I mean hook up. I mean, they don't want you to meet another person and because then you leave the dating app. So it's it's a way to make money and if they actually matched you with people that were going to be a good match, they'd leave or they'd lose two customers instead of just one. So it's not the best means, I think, to meet people. But it's the only way to meet people short of, going online and doing that. I was on a podcast last week or maybe the week before, Wilfred Riley, and he talks a lot about the social impact of the loneliness factors and all that sort of thing. And he DM'd me and he said, you should just put your profile on Twitter. It's like, no, 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 no. Already when I talk about these things, my DMs fill up immediately. And they're, nobody's sending me dick pics, which is great, but it's it's for the wrong reasons. Like if you want to meet somebody, you kind of want to get to know them just to get to know them first, not because you're going to date them. Like the putting that I'm going to date you pressure on before you have any idea who that person is too much pressure.
So is part of the problem that we've lost that third space? What was so the Scott Galloway person who's been making the rounds is kind of trying to get men back into the
Oh yeah,
working
I saw
space.
his book the other day.
Yeah. So and I think one of the maybe is it third place. So you've got work, you've got home, and then what's that third
It
place? And
used to be
men are
school,
yeah.
right? And I think that that's, I said, to my son, he's married, but and he married his high school sweetheart, and that was probably the smartest thing he could have done because they really knew each other. They spent a lot of time just being friends and all of that. And I shouldn't be talking about his stuff, but I think most of my friends who are married, 40 years later or 30 years or whatever it is, they knew each other in high school and they might not have dated then, but they knew each other and they knew each other pretty well. Um, so, you know, I think school is a really I think it's important to, and this is part of the Gen X problem, is that we were told we could wait. We could put off marriage, we could put off kids, we could do all of that and it would, we can catch up. It's not a big deal. But meeting people is really hard. And the clock starts ticking a lot earlier than we'd like to believe. Um, so once you hit my age, if you've been single, it's much harder to meet people because our groups are set. So you've got your group of people, and the idea of bringing somebody new into it, you want to make sure that they're going to stick around for a while. So there's so many different factors to it, but I think the easiest way to meet is through school or work, if that's allowed, church.
Yeah.
But I think being young is the key to it also. You're not as set in your ways yet.
There's a
You're
lot of
accepting
yeah. And I think that all of those things seem to be going away. So work is either,
remote.
yeah, it's remote, or if it's not remote, it's 3 days in, 2 days out, or something like that. And it's tough to sync up people's schedules. Um, the that was the old trope in kind of I spent a lot of time in the PR industry, and there were certain offices, certain places where people would meet. You meet your significant other at work. That doesn't happen these days for reasons that have been discussed. People are going to church much less often if they are
Mhm.
going at all, and some of that went remote after COVID
Yeah.
and went back. It's funny. I started going back to the Catholic Church, and I noticed that the sign of peace is a head nod or a wave, and not a handshake.
Oh, really?
And this might just be this specific Parish, and it could be different other places. But I kind of thought that was a little off-putting because part of it is the the actual human connection.
Right.
Hey, I'm shaking your hand. So some of these things are just kind of going away, and it's almost as if everything has been pushed online, which is what the grand design was when the web took off. Well, everything, online's going to make everything easier, and not necessarily make it everything easier. It makes it a lot different, and it could reduce some friction in some places, but then it creates a heck of a lot more friction other places. And I guess online dating has added much more friction to that equation.
Yeah, I don't know how different it is for the younger people. I know they're struggling to find mates as well. Um, I I haven't done like a Tinder, so I don't know how that works. That kind of scares me. That's the whole hookup thing doesn't appeal to me at all. But I think anytime that you can kind of order a mate, you're going to be disappointed. And then I remember when I first got on online dating, I was just newly divorced and um, I had kids and going out was kind of overwhelming, but I could shop online and it's like, oh, I can just pick a guy out. The world is your oyster. And unfortunately, those same guys are still on the dating apps. So am I. So obviously, there's something that is missing about it. And I don't think it's the guys per se, and I don't think it's the women. I think it's the method that is being used. But I will also say, dating, like we have done such a disservice to men in the last what 30 years 40 years by telling them that they don't really matter that much, and a lot of them have checked out. They're not interested in dating. And every time I've ever put any poll up or something like that, there will inevitably be quite a few men saying, we don't even try anymore because either the women are not particularly nice or they ghost them or whatever. um, but also because they just don't feel like they're appreciated. And back what, 70s 80s, usually dating back then it was the man or the boy who did the initiating. And I remember we were being told back in 17 magazine it's okay to call a boy, and we did, but it wasn't. I don't think they particularly liked it, and I don't think we particularly liked it because it kind of flips the whole script um, of that traditional. Oh God, what is the word?
The
Of the
courting, the
Yeah.
courting.
And so, well,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. You want and and so with what I've noticed, at least in my age group with these guys, and I don't know what the women are doing on, like I don't see that side of things. And I've heard horror stories. So I'm not saying it's the men's fault necessarily. I don't want to, I think the women are just as bad. But you'll strike, you do likes back and forth, and then like they'll like you, you like them back, and then nothing happens. So like the ball is in their court, but they don't follow up on it. Now, maybe they are no longer interested. That's certainly a reasonable thing and fine. But it's like pulling teeth to have a conversation with any of them. And they'll leave a statement rather than a question. It's like I don't know where to go with that. There was this one guy that I was communicating with, and he had a picture of him with his nephews and their babies. And I'm like, that's you know, you're a 60 some year old man and you're holding nephews that are babies. That seems like they're a little too young. Not too young, but I thought, well, wow, there must be an age gap somewhere, right? And his response, one, it didn't even answer my question. He just reiterated that they were his nephews. And and normally that would be the end of it. It's like, okay, well, he didn't answer the question. Maybe he's a bot. Maybe, who knows? But I don't know where to go with that. But I am trying to be more out there. But so I said, I said, well, that didn't even answer my question, or that didn't really answer my question. And he came back and said, yes, they're babies. Like, okay, again, I don't know what like, why would you even answer the question? It's insane out there. And it seems like a little thing, but the art of communicating is really necessary in dating. So you have to have the ability to have a conversation. And maybe social media has kind of, we're used to, it's kind of like shouting into the void. Maybe that's part of the problem. I don't know. I'm always surprised when, a 60-some-year-old man doesn't have a skill to communicate in a back and forth manner. But a lot of them have said, they are checking out. They're not interested because they've been, put down. And and they have been. That's the thing. I have nothing but sympathy for the way men have been treated in the last 30 years. The whole idea of we didn't need, a fish doesn't need a bicycle, or a fish needs a bicycle like a woman needs a man, was so, I think, devastating to the whole idea of traditional marriage, but also just to men. Like, why would you? These are the people who protect us, right? They're the first line of defense. They're the ones who are going to, you know, take care of us. And we've just told them that they're worthless. And I just think it's horrible what we've done to them. So I don't know how I think, clawing back all of these things that we've let go, whether it's the handshake at church or all of that. I don't know how we do it. And I'm not even sure we can do it because those traditions were there for a reason. They worked. But then somebody came along and, the feminists pretty much said, we don't need to do it that way. But we really do. So but I don't know how we get it back. Like Trump isn't going to do that.
Maybe the way we get it back is one book at a time, talking about bad dates
Yeah.
and
Well, the
and
other 25 buyers of my book might.
don't don't put yourself down, because this is a fun read.
Oh
I
no,
enjoyed it.
I enjoyed doing it. It was, it's self-publishing. It's a hard thing to do. But we still haven't, the book publishing is so hard, car left progressive, that they're never going to touch me. So that's just the way it is. And that was the whole purpose of the book, was to figure out how to do it, the mechanics of self-publishing. And it was work. It was hard to do. But I learned quite a bit from it, and hopefully people can at least get a laugh out of some of these things.
Which I did. Any parting thoughts for the viewers? I mean, you joke about 25 buyers in your book. I'm hoping that I can get 100 viewers this podcast.
Between you and me, we're just
Well, I'm gonna cut it up into little bits, and we'll put YouTube shorts up, and maybe that'll
there you go. Yeah, I'm still trying to master social media.
yeah.
That's, this is something I've been thinking, and maybe you have a thought on this, is with AI coming along, and like, I'm a web designer by trade, and I do social media for other companies, and I'm getting pushed out because AI can do it, and they don't need to pay my exorbitant fees to do that when they can get, chat GPT to do, 20 posts in 3 seconds. um, More and more people are going to flood to the influencer sphere, I think, um, to try and earn some money, because we're going to, people are shedding jobs. Like, what was it? Was it Amazon, and was it even Target, that, they're just losing corporate jobs? So I don't know, but I don't know. And that worries me on many levels of how that's going to impact society.
Yeah, I'm worried too, but I think that part of it gets solved through more of this, which is actual authentic. This is an authentic conversation. You are not a bot. I am not a
I'm not
bot.
concerned about AI making these. I mean, that's a thing. And I think we're already getting inundated with that. And it's not necessarily a concern, but it is that more people are going to try and do this. And the platforms are going to be filled. Like right now, there's still a lot of people trying to get all the same views, right? And when you are going to start putting in more and more people doing that, you're going to get more and more ridiculous stuff.
But the slop I hope the slop will be identified for what it is. That there's kind of a little bit of an uncanny valley element to it. Like I'll give you an example. There's you know how they do the local cable ads near you where you got your national ads, you watch whatever cable channel, doesn't matter what channel it is, and then they'll drop in kind of the local access ads. You can tell that they're local. And one of the barely there insurance plans here in Chicago, United Auto Insurance, um, they have they have so much AI that it's borderline ridiculous because their ad, which they all follow the same formula of here we are, we insure you, and here's our jingle, and then move on to the next thing. But they have a spokesperson who's supposed to be the all of the time life operator type person who is obviously AI. And it is so much so that it's staring you in the face. And at some point you kind of wonder, and I've seen a bunch of these ads that are being dropped into the local access portion where it's like, is this just it's a race to the bottom and you know it's going to end up being like bad web banner ads and eventually it's going to be like you're going to tune this stuff out. You're going to have AI fatigue. And I just wonder if that's kind of where it's going to be going, that you and I are going to start looking at stuff and be like, this is obviously. I saw a thing on ESPN the other day on this a sidebar on ESPN, and it was like, what are the leagues and cities that are the most successful in North American sports history? It's like, what are you talking about? This is obviously somebody typed something into a formula and said, put up this bot piece, and maybe somebody will click on it. But we're going to get to a point where everything is going to look so fake that it's going to be back to the human. It is the human influencer. The human influencer is going to say, hi, I'm obviously human, and you need one of these or one
Yes.
of those, or visit this or do whatever.
I would agree with that. I think that the AI, like I saw one today, it was, the coyote chasing the roadrunner. And it it was it was not obviously AI, except for the fact that the coyote's faster than the roadrunner, right? But the roadrunner, it's just like the cartoon. And and what that's why it's put out there. My concern is less the AI content. It's the content that the humans will create to rise above any of the stuff that's out there. The rage bait, the clickbait, the Nick Fuentes, these people who have these kind of out there opinions, but they find these, that's how we ended up with furries, right? You just end up having more and more bizarre nonsense because people click on it because they're outraged by it. And when we, yeah, and I harp on this all the time on my Twitter page, is that you have to stop sharing content that is out of rage, right? Just to show everybody, oh, this is awful, because it doesn't matter. The algorithm doesn't care if it's awful. It's going to elevate it. And then people see that as the norm. And so it's a dangerous, but most people don't understand that. They don't get that what they put out there is what they're going to get more of. And so it's not to censor it, but you have to really curate your what you're consuming so that you're not adding to it. Because if somebody gets a million clicks or a million impressions or whatever the metric is um, because they put a video out of, um, you know, a man in a dress. the the next person is going to want to up that ante a little bit. And so it's now, and I don't mean to get into the whole trans thing, but the idea of this outrage, the people that tattoo their face or have the piercings all over it, or that might be a lifestyle, who knows. But whatever it is, these videos of people talking nonsense or these ridiculous ideas that, you know, the women crying in their cars about whatever. And it's like, there's no way this is real. There's no way anybody really believes what this person is saying. But the next person sees that it's lucrative to put that out. So they make one that's even more bizarre or nonsensical. But people don't realize that either it's staged, or well, that they don't realize that it's staged. They think, it's real. And I think, and I talked about that in my book, is that, women especially we're prone to contagions, and we want to believe that the truth, right? Whatever you're presenting to us is real. And the internet is a lot of lies. There's a lot of lies out there. People don't, they're not, they don't scrutinize it enough to think, well, maybe that's just somebody creating clickbait. I mean, the monetization factor is huge in what we consume out there, and it's by people like you and me. Like I try really hard not to do clickbaity stuff. um I really, if I ask a question, it's because I'm curious what people think of it. I'm not trying to, but I don't do the rage bait, or at least I try not to. Um, but it's tempting to do it because it is lucrative. And we all want to grow our audiences. We all want to, make money on the platform or on any of the platforms. And it seems the only way we can do that is by becoming more and more outrageous. It would be nice if it could be like what is it? The TikTok in China is completely different than ours.
Right.
It's kids doing, posting their good grades and things like that. And obviously the government did that on purpose, right? Because they want to have excelled, students and that sort of thing. Now we're not doing that, but we have the ability to do it ourselves. So it's about personal integrity and that independent. I think it can be done, but I think it's harder this way. So I harp on it, but it really is important not to consume content that is outrageous. And again, I'm not trying to censor it. I think, but the marketplace doesn't let it, because it's monetized and because the algorithm can't decipher between bad and good per se. You're going to get whatever is outrageous. It's just unfortunate that it's not a good guy doing a good thing. But people have tried. So they're getting back to the AI thing. There was this couple who were having AI write stories and then generate an image based on the story, and then they would put it out there. And they were making 60,000 a week doing this. It was fake though. Even though they were feel good stories, that's wrong too, right? So it doesn't, I mean, I would rather have fake AI stories than real ragey kind of stories or whatever. But I just want authenticity more than anything. I don't know if it's possible.
Yeah, what's the Chinese proverb? May you live in interesting times.
Mm.
We are living in interesting times. And then
Yeah,
there's,
but you know what? We always were,
we always
right?
were, we always will be. Yeah, maybe we have more knowledge of the depth and breadth of how interesting it actually is, thanks to all of the tools at our disposal, the phones
Yeah.
in our hand and the
I took my dogs on a walk the other day, and I left my phone at home. I left it on my desk. I didn't even notice it until I got back. And it's like, wow, that was kind of liberating?
something, isn't it? It's
Hmm.
just yeah,
And
you leave
as
the
Gen
phone.
X, we grew up without those phones, right? Like, if you wanted to see a friend, you had to go knock on their door or you had to call them. But, you had one telephone line in the house. and there was no privacy. So, I think they complain about, is it Gen Z, that they can't even look you in the eye, and they don't know how to do any of these things because they've only just been punching it out on their phone. But we had to go knock on the door and talk to an adult and say, "Hey, can so and so come out and play?" And there
Yep.
is that that is character producing, So again, how do you get all of these things that we want to get back to? I mean, I think get rid of the phone would probably be the first biggest impact that we could have.
Yeah, even just trying to do the phone free thing. I mean, we've tried this sometimes with the kids at the mall where we'll tell them, the old days it would be, I will see you back here
Yep.
in front of this store at 5:30. And that's what happens. You run into each other at 5:30. Oh, they're 5 minutes late. Then they're not. But on the flip side of that is they're trying to get the kids to be like, well, I'm not going to panic if it's 5:35 and they're not here. And that's a challenge when everything is right at your disposal. One of the things that I've tried to do personally is, and I know you talk in the book about the importance of doing puzzles and putting the phone down and just getting your mind in kind of that place. I all the time am trying to, when I can't remember something, I don't want my first thing to be, I'm gonna Google this.
Yeah, I've
I'm
been
gonna
doing
find
that too. And
Wikipedia.
at this age, I have a lot of those moments where it's like
Yes.
I can't remember, oh, the actor's name. Who is that actor? And it's always Kevin Costner for me. But
Oh,
I can
nice.
never bring his name up. But I never want to Google it because it's like I know
What
it'll come.
and this could be a good note to close on. Did you notice who the people's most sexiest person
I have no
ever
idea
might have
who he
been?
is. Never seen him before in my life.
And
But
that was my response too. And I guess he was in Bridgerton and he might have been in that Wicked um reboot.
haven't seen
I
any of
can't
those.
remember, Jonathan Bailey or something like that. I can't rem and I'm at the gym and they put this guy up there and I'm like, this is awesome. This is great for him. I feel so happy to, but who the hell is this
Yeah.
guy?
I
And
but I think that's more a sign of our age than anything else.
yeah, it could be kind of the okay boomer moment.
Yeah.
But we'll be chastised for not having watched Bridgerton.
I mean, I
Uh,
didn't know who Sydney Sweeney was until she wore a pair of jeans, and
Okay, so I can one up you on that, but maybe it's because I'm a guy. But having watched the Mike White vehicles that were now see, I can't remember the name of the shows that were taking place at a resort, the White
oh, the
Lotus.
White Lotus.
Yeah, so Sydney Sweeney was in one of
Oh,
the,
was she?
the
Okay.
first White Lotuses, White Lodi. I think she was in the first one.
That's the only one I saw, and but that's the thing. All the actresses look the same to me, and so do the actors. They all just look the same.
But what's weird is that at the office there were some Gen Z folks, and we were talking about Sydney Sweeney, and they did not know her from the White Lotus. They knew her from the show Euphoria, which was very
Oh,
popular with the Gen Z types and others. But yeah, and I think she's actually more than just a pretty face. I think she actually can act, and there's another movie that's coming out with kind of a shifting what you think of a Sydney Sweeney being capable of. And I
and
think
I
I
don't
can't
mean any
remember.
shade on
Oh no,
Sydney Sweeney.
I wasn't assuming that.
I
But
bought jeans from American Eagle because of her. So,
there you go.
but I just don't know who, I knew the actors and actresses from, the Happy Days and I'm trying to think, the Love Boat and now the Love Boat was great because it had the older generation of actors and actresses. So you got to see like who? Fred Astaire and Carol Channing and God, those names come to me easily, right? But I can't
Yeah.
remember Kevin Costner in anything.
At
Um,
some point, yeah, and at some point I'll have to send you the supercut of every single actor who appeared on The Love Boat. Somebody takes their face with the name and has the theme running,
oh, I want
but
to see that
it's
with
like
the
20 minutes long.
little boat in
Yeah,
the.
with the little boat logo and all
Okay,
that sort of stuff. It's every single person who's ever been on the Love Boat in alphabetical order, and there's
I
some
tried
quite good
watching
ones.
that the other maybe a month or so ago, and it was still quite enjoyable. So
And there's something, I guess, timeless about it, and maybe this is another Gen X moment that we're bonding over, but it's like, can you have a show like that now, which is obviously designed, I mean, that was designed for the masses. That was not a niche show. That was on Saturday nights on ABC. And you know that they were that somebody had a contract with
yeah,
whatever their whatever their company was that okay, you got to do one episode of the Love Boat, and that's how they're getting all these people
yeah,
cycling in and out. And McLean Stevenson on the Love Boat, boy, this will be great. You know, will Henry
right.
Blake find love? Um, but I mean, I know they tried to reboot it in maybe the early 2000s because the actor who played Jackie Childs on Seinfeld was one of the actors, but it just did not work. And I don't know if it would work these days because we're so niche and, you
Well,
know,
you can stream, right? And they put
um,
stuff out there like now, movies that are in the theaters, you can also stream. And I was in a similar vein. I like to listen to the uh, the replays of the top American Top 40.
mhm.
So as a Gen Xer, Sunday night, that's what everybody in our age group was doing. They had that on the radio. And when the next day we'd talk about, what were the top 10 or 5 or whatever, but it was something that we all did and enjoyed, even though we were alone in our room or something. We were, oh, sorry. um, we were um we were still experiencing it together,
Yeah.
you know, because it was happening at the same time. And I think that's probably why most television shows from back then really do resonate with us and are very nostalgic for us, especially like a Love Boat or even the specials. What was it? The Battle of the Network Stars and all that sort of thing. Um, or even Evil Knievel jumping whatever he was jumping. All of those were events that we might not have done together, but we all watched it unfold. Even Roots or what was the other big television show? Um,
The Winds of War was kind of that was a big one that was on like the miniseries, the whole big miniseries thing. Well, the day after was the big movie
oh
that everybody
yes.
remembers. I remember not watching it
Oh.
deliberately because I was so scared of the concept of nuclear war that I was like, I'm not going to watch this. I'll just find out tomorrow what everybody thought of it. Um, but and this is why I've had friends tell me that the the friends who have gone away from Twitter/X, but have gone over to Blue Sky, and then there'll be a cultural touchstone moment of some sort, and they'll feel like the early days of Twitter felt like, because that was the closest thing to a shared experience that we were all having. So you could find your own different angle to explore on a Twitter, but if something was happening, like you remember Left Shark during the Super Bowl, where the Super Bowl was going on and Katy Perry does the halftime show, but then Twitter was exploding with all of this content talking about Left Shark. And so yeah, it's we've gone away from the shared experiences realm, and I don't know, that's another genie that's not going back in the bottle.
No, or the final episode of MASH.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's a shame, frankly. I mean, it's no different than the War of the Worlds on the radio with our
Right.
parents, you know. And maybe there are those things. I just can't think of any. because you can get your content anytime you want. You don't have to wait. You don't have to, even, you know, you can binge a show in a weekend instead of
Well,
having to wait till the next week to see it.
well, and I think this is why some of the shows that, and the White Lotus did this quite well, where it was, you knew that there were some people who were going to binge all 7 episodes or whatever it was after it all dropped, but there were also quite a few people who were waiting for each Sunday night. You remember the Sunday night experience used to
I
be
I was just talking
HBO
about that
owned
the other day.
HBO owned Sunday night
Yeah.
and Monday morning around the water cooler. No, the water cooler has gone away, but Monday morning around the water cooler would be dominated with what happened on The Sopranos last night, what happened on Sex and the City last night. And I think that some of the shows are coming back to this, where they're saying, okay, we're going to drop. I want to say Netflix is even doing this now, where they're saying we're going to drop an episode a week, but not a moment too soon. You got to wait for the next one. But we're not going to solve all the problems of the day, I think. But okay, so Jennifer Brown, the book is Ginger Snapped, and check it out because it's fun and she's fun. And this has been a hoot. We'll have to
Yeah,
do
this
this
is fun.
again at some point.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing your time and your expertise and your what else have you shared? Whatever
I don't
else
know,
you've
but I will
shared.
share the photo I just snapped of my cat chasing your hands.
Oh, that's awesome.
She's
That's
sitting right
awesome.
in front of my monitor. So,
But I just need to keep doing this
yeah.
somehow. And that's awesome, Jennifer. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun.